Yeah, so I've actually been doing the nomad thing for a little over a year and I think almost a year and a half now. But so a little bit of a background. I graduated from university around the same time, actually. And so I was originally, while I was still in school, I was working full time for a company that was based out in Los Angeles in the United States, called the Rubicon Project. And I was working, doing a little bit of growth hacking, a little bit of digital marketing for a startup that they were eventually going to go on and launch. But this was all before it was actually meant to be launched. And I was living in North Carolina at the time on the east coast of the US. And so I was working for about 3 months there. And I realized, that as we were working remotely in the first place and weren't really, I guess, interacting in any way as a team in an office environment, I was really intrigued by how well and how fluidly we were able to continue to communicate and to have, kind of a feeling of teamwork. And so the opportunity actually came up for me to go and study in Copenhagen, Denmark. So that would have been 9 hours apart from Los Angeles in time zone terms, and obviously on a different continent. And I wound up actually asking if I could do that and work for 5 months while I was abroad, full time as well, for the same company and the same team, and they actually said yes. And from there, a really interesting thing happened. I think I discovered just the, I guess, immensity of the flexibility of remote work in over the next couple of months. And there was actually quite a funny moment at one point where I was on a call sitting on the balcony of my Danish apartment with one of my bosses at the time, and it was dark outside in Denmark. It was getting to be November, and so they have pretty long winters during that time, pretty short days, I guess. And my boss, who was in Los Angeles, and it's still sunny out at the time, said, "Well, why is it dark outside?" And I reminded him that I had been working for 2.5 months whilst in Denmark, and he actually didn't realize that I had been gone the entire time. He'd forgotten. And so, kind of enabled by the fluidity with which we were able to communicate, and it took a little bit of time zone bending on my part to act like, I was there during the day. But, we were actually able to enable a work environment in which, you didn't actually even notice the difference in time zone or, in the physical, I guess, difference of two continents and an ocean. And so it was a really cool realization, I think. And from there, I started to think more and more about, how can I take this one step further and create a work environment that really doesn't depend whatsoever on where I am, where I'm sitting, and how I'm working, in order for me to do the best work with whoever I'm working with. So from that moment, I think I really became determined to see, just how far I could push the boundary of physical location. And so while I was still in Denmark, as it's starting to get a little bit colder and colder in Denmark, I was going to leave in mid-December. I started planning this big trip that I was going to take once I got back. I had to go back to the United States for just a couple of months to take a course and then graduate. And then after that, I was planning on going and being kind of wherever I wanted. And so I got this idea in my mind that I was going to spend some time along the Adriatic, and to, I guess, more or less perpetually travel for the next year after I'd graduated. But I guess the big difference for me, compared to a lot of the people, who I knew who might have been doing a similar thing, was I was planning on working full-time the entire time. Whether that was with a company or in my own capacity, I wasn't quite sure yet. But my ultimate goal was to, I guess, to use my work as a way to continually travel, to see more of the world, to meet new people, and to, I guess, do so in a way that actually was, in theory, saving me money on things like rent, compared to possibly, the United States. And so I got this scheme in my mind that I was going to work and travel, kind of do a full lap around the world, starting off in actually Italy is what I was going to wind up doing, and going through, again, the Adriatic, and then all the way down to Greece for a little while. And after several months, I was going to go to Asia for a little while and work there as well. But so I wound up actually planning this trip. And then as the time of my graduation came, I ended up quitting the job with the Rubicon project because I realized that there was still some schedule rigidity that I was going to have to maintain there, and returning to Raleigh, North Carolina, and some of the startup companies that had been working around for several years prior, as I'd been studying entrepreneurship, and announcing that I was going to be, from that moment, taking on growth marketing and growth hacking, digital marketing contract work. And so that was actually where I ended up finding my first clients as well. So I finally graduated in last May, and I got, I guess, a couple of days later, I ended up taking off for Italy. I had one client at the time that was actually a confirmed yes, and several that were considered to be prospects, I guess, that had a pretty good chance of going through. And I was planning on living and traveling for about a year, but I hadn't actually booked a return flight at the time, so it could have been as much time, I suppose, as I wanted, or as little. And so I ended up departing, and I traveled for several months. My plan was to live in one place for somewhere between 1 week to 2 weeks at a time, and kind of be booking things about 2 weeks in advance, just so that I could have, I guess, like a relatively consistent idea of where I was going to be, and to kind of slow travel, via buses or trains or boats my way down the coast, eventually to Greece. And then I had a couple of friends that I was going to meet in Bulgaria as well, actually, before taking off to what I thought was going to be Southeast Asia. And so, over the course of 2.5 months, I worked in a huge variety of environments. And luckily, that one client that I had at the time was very patient with me as I figured out, where you can find Wi-Fi and where you can't find Wi-Fi, and etc. How to, I guess, work in so many different environments, and out of cafes and co-working spaces and kind of everything in between. But so, as I went, I started to realize, I guess I started to meet a lot of people, several of whom were doing what I was doing, and most of whom were, I guess, either traveling kind of for leisure, or, woofing or something to that capacity. But so I was able to meet a lot of people who were very, I guess, excited about traveling. And, as I also explained what I was doing, I started to realize that people were really kind of encapsulated with what I was doing, and how I was able to more or less sustainably travel, and even leverage the cost of living in some countries that were slightly less than the United States, in a way that allowed me to either work a little bit less, or to, I guess, live at a higher standard slightly than I might have been able to, or in my case, just to contribute more to my savings than, my United States-based counterparts. So I was receiving conversations kind of from the end of people who were, friends back home, saying like, oh, this is kind of crazy, how are you doing this? Is this actually responsible? And I was saying, actually, yes, it's really, it's financially, I guess, enabling me in a way that, that even, moving somewhere and living, in a city or somewhere in the United States might not actually do, because I'm able to, to save more than half of what I'm making. And, that, I guess, can go toward whatever else it is that I want to do when I get back, or, can enable me to continue to do this. It gives me a buffer, which is a very good thing to have when you're, working on a project by project basis. And then I was also receiving conversations from people, I was hearing so much from people who were, in the hostels and in Airbnbs and kind of in whatever living arrangement I was in, that were just astounded, I guess, by what this interaction between employee and employer looked like, and how, the future of work actually might contain, a lot of elements of people being able to work while they're traveling to larger extents. So, and obviously as we're having these conversations, I was asking more people that, that I was speaking to about what it was that they aspired to do as well. And it seemed as though a lot of people really were looking for more flexibility in their jobs. They wanted a lot of different things as far as work goes. But there was kind of this common thread of a really strong desire to at least have the option to go somewhere else, and to work while they're chasing their dreams, especially with the younger, I guess, demographic that has just graduated from university or, is just beginning their careers. And the other thing that I really quickly realized is that a lot of people have marketable skills, but a lot of them also didn't have the know-how or the ability to generate clients and create projects on their own. And so that was something that I wasn't a pro at by any stretch, and I'm still not, but I was still trying to very actively develop. I realized that in order to be a good freelancer, you also have to be a good salesperson. But I recognized that that's not everybody's strength. And so, from that moment, I think I started thinking about what is it that I guess you could do possibly to empower more people to, I guess, create these work arrangements. And I think it was around that time that I started to have the idea for Bigfoot, which is actually the project that I'm working on now. And so what Bigfoot is it's a collective, I guess, a big network of freelancers, everybody from content creators to web developers to drone pilots. We have a couple of people. And, I guess it's at its kind of inactive state. It's just a group of people who like to keep in touch, who are trying to pursue location flexible jobs. And at its active state, it's a referral engine. It's a way that people who can, who are getting projects, or people who I guess are good at generating leads for projects and clients, are able to actually say, okay, so I'm for example, a marketing strategist, but I'm working with more and more clients who want to, have maybe websites built, or who want to have, I guess, more content created. And then they're able to, I guess, within this kind of pre-vetted and trusted network, they're able to find people who are able to, to take on those projects, and people who share a lot of the same values as them, and people who also have demonstrated an interest in being a part of this, in working as a team and not just being kind of a solo freelancer. Because I think I've found that just because you want to be able to have your own autonomy and your own independence and your own, location flexibility doesn't necessarily mean that you want to work alone all the time. But so Bigfoot kind of came up as an idea, and that's kind of what I've been, more so than even looking for projects and contract work lately, I've been doing is trying to build, I guess, and speak to as many nomads as possible, and build this network of people who is able to, and interested in working together to take on slightly larger projects, and hopefully in doing that also enable a batch of potential nomads who might not have otherwise been able to do so for either, I guess, lack of project stability or lack of client generating ability, and allow them to come into this world and test drive it and see if this location flexibility is something that they want to do. So, as the winter time rolled around, I'd returned to the United States for a little while. I was sort of living in and out of New York City at the time. I'd recognized by this point that a city like New York is actually really good to develop business. My goal was kind of also becoming to leverage, the low cost of living in some areas, and then balance that with the relatively high cost of living, but also high network ability of a city like New York, to develop the business that I would then take with me on my world travels. And so my next kind of trip that I was planning was to take a car and to trip across the United States with a ski pass for several months, and to, I guess, be skiing in the mornings and working in the evenings as I went, and to continue to do that for a little while until eventually we made it from the East Coast to the West Coast, and went from like Los Angeles up to San Francisco, and then we were going to stay for a little bit over there. I'd heard as well about people being kind of bi-coastal as well within the United States, and and I guess living back and forth between the Californian coast and New York as a way to kind of get the best of both worlds with the tech and networking and everything, or the the outdoorsy and nature that California provides and the big city bustle that New York does. And so I was really inspired by that, and I wanted to see if that was something that, I could find a personal fit for in my life. Um, and so, again, this entire time I'm working on this Bigfoot concept, and I've kind of fully pivoted by this point to instead of seeking projects that I can work on my own and trying to kind of hog the work, I was trying to pitch this to as many people as I could find, companies, accelerators, VCs, this idea that, I'm collecting a group of people who's really interested in working a little differently, but that I'm also able to get a lot of talent that might not otherwise be accessible to the kind of more traditional firms. And that together, we're looking to kind of redefine the shape of what, I guess, a remote and outsourced work project looks like. I think one of the big things I realized early on too was that we're going to have to make this seem as much as possible like we're the office next door, in order for for a lot of the companies that I was speaking to work with us. And so trying to kind of create that culture, pitching Bigfoot, and trying to start taking projects, as a team as opposed to just as a solo freelancer, because that to me was what seemed like it was going to be something that I was really interested in, in growing and in scaling and in moving forward with. That was kind of the more sustainable option in my mind than just working on my own. But like I said earlier, I was in it for different reasons than some. I think for me it was a way to kind of challenge myself and explore the opportunity of what exactly, I guess pushing the boundary of what the work environment can look like. And hopefully then to bring that back and, to be able to coach teams on how to best kind of maintain a sense of teamliness, while they're distributed. Because I think one of the things that I've recognized is that whether we like it or not, I think the direction that work and office culture is going to go is going to be more and more distributed. So, it might be best to be prepared for it and to be on the, I guess, the end of that, that's foreseeing it happening and preparing themselves accordingly. And then I think on the other end, I wanted to, I guess, to find a way to chase my own ambitions. And, I wasn't, I guess, going to take the answer of, okay, now you've graduated and so you have to go and sit in an office and work. I think that's a perfectly reasonable option, and it could absolutely be a really good one. But I think I was unwilling to accept that that was the only option. And so I've chased this, and I think now I'm realizing that I really want to enable as many people as I can to have that ability, to at least try it on for size. And, one of the things that I've learned is it really isn't for everybody. I think that even I have found that it can get really lonely at times. I've been traveling with a partner, and I've been meeting so many friends along the way, both meeting up with and actually making new friends. And it's, even then I think that there's a little bit that you eventually, it's possible to get really tired from kind of a lack of consistency. And so part of what I'm seeing in my future is to, I guess, to head back to a little bit more of a home base and become something of a semi-nomad, I guess, where I spend part of the year traveling and, I'm still, I guess, benefiting from what I hope to create as a remote work arrangement, but also have the benefits of being a part of a community and a team and everything. But I think also that, I think that's everybody's right to determine for themselves. And so I think I want to enable as many people as possible to be able to, to go and to do that for themselves. But so I think that the biggest thing that I really want to do from here on is to continue to have conversations with people, and to, if anybody is interested in speaking more about the digital nomadish or nomadic life, and I guess how to do it, or, the various financial or locational benefits of doing it, or, even just the logistical elements, I think I'm really happy to talk about that. But I think that I'm really now interested in driving the culture forward, and exploring what the different ways, now that I've kind of been to the one extreme of it, what the different ways to kind of incorporate this back into I guess, a more conventional and traditional lifestyle are. So if anybody does actually want to reach out to me personally or to continue this conversation, I can be reached in a variety of ways. My email is wesleyhaddon@gmail.com. Or, on Instagram, you can go follow me at wes.haddon. That's WES.HADDON. Um, and, I'll also hopefully include some of this information in the note as well. But I mean, I'm really happy to speak to people, and I think it's a really exciting journey, and I think the people around me have been very excited and intrigued by it, and so I think I'm mostly just happy to spread the nomadic community and have more people try this on for size, and make sure that people know that location is not something, we have the technology now, that location is not something that you have to necessarily have as a constant in order for a workplace to continue to thrive anymore. And so we can be really playful with that. And there are a lot of new opportunities and new doors that are opening thanks to that.